Hello and welcome to another edition of Ask the Experts here on City News 570. I'm joined today by Faisal Susiwala. Faisal is Canada's top real estate broker. He's also ranked within the top 5 in the world for RE/MAX. Faisal started his career at the young age of 18 and has been delivering outstanding results for the past 30 years, most notably with RE/MAX Twin City Realty. So he knows what he's talking about, and he's giving us some of his time today. Hello and welcome to the show, Faisal.
Hi, Brock. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Listeners, if you're interested in any of the information we discuss over the next hour, please reach out to Faisal. You can start your journey at homeshack.com. You can call him directly, 519-624-5555, or email Faisal@homeshack.com. Later in the show, we're going to circle back and talk with Faisal about his book, The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker. The book is currently available on Amazon, on Audible, and on Kindle as well. But for now, let's jump right in. Faisal, if we take a look at the current market, we had a chat back in October, but what are we seeing now? What's happening right now?
We're starting to see really a balanced market right now. We're finding that people have sort of gotten over the initial shock of the, interest rate hikes, the decline in pricing. And of course, we went through this time that, we had 62% almost increase over 2020 to 2022 March. And we've seen 27, 28% of that give back right now, which is still well above pre-pandemic values. Sales have now become balanced, and we're seeing that homes are on average staying on the market 22 days. Now, I've been doing this for a long time, and Brock, if you remember back, say 15 or 20 years ago, you put up a home for sale, it typically took 2 months to sell. So 22 days on the market. We've just been spoiled because we came out of a market where homes were on the market for 7 or 8 days. So in our region last month, there were just under 500 homes sold and just under 1,000 listings on the market. So, that's not too bad. Now, of course, a year ago, it was almost the opposite of that, where you would have, 1,000 buyers for 400 homes or 300 homes that were on the market, which created that multiple offer bidding and whatnot. And of course, that hasn't gotten away, provided that your realtor is still implementing the proper strategies of attracting the higher number of viewings by pricing it at a reasonable price, which will increase the number of offers that you're going to get on your home, which will ultimately increase the selling price of your home. And we're still seeing that GTA audience coming into our market.
When we take a look at those numbers, and you mentioned this, that idea of, what happened between 2020 and 2022 and so on, if we really wanted a fair comparison, would it make sense for us to almost ignore that data that we had there, because it was a huge blip, and maybe even jump back to 2019 and say, hey, this is where we were in 2019. And you've talked about this already, that idea of from then until now, we've seen this 30% increase. And really, we're still doing quite well if we sort of ignore that sort of blip that happened there.
Yeah, absolutely. If you take that time right out of the market, you're still up approximately 15% per year, which is very, very good. And traditionally, we haven't seen that kind of increase in our marketplace, or that kind of appreciation in our marketplace. Typically, we're 3 to 5%. So what ended up happening is we really played catch up. We became very well known to our neighbors to the east, namely GTA, Toronto, Milton, Mississauga, Brampton, Oakville, Burlington. And those folks realized that, this is a great community to live in, great community to work from, lots of amenities that are available, and they can work from home. And that work from home created this deurbanization of the larger areas into our region. But now the opposite is happening in the rental industry, in the rental market. So those folks who are sitting on the sidelines today thinking, I'm going to wait for this market to crash, I think they're going to have a pretty rude awakening, because they're going into rentals. And when they're going into rentals, they're driving the rental market up. And, we've talked about the housing shortage, and we're going to talk a lot about this new Bill 23 as we get on to the show here. We're seeing that people are now bidding to rent, we have been asking $2,600 or $2,700 a month for a townhome. I have folks walking into my office with a bank draft in the amount of $36,000, which is $3,000 a month. So they're overpaying for these just to secure a rental position because there isn't enough inventory out there on the rental. But we're still dealing with this massive housing crisis. So when I hear people saying, "Oh, this market's going to crash," yes, it may correct even further, but it's not going to crash because where is the population going to live?
Right. And that point of coming in with $36,000 for rent for a year, you've got a place to stay for a year, but at the end of that year, you don't really have anything to show for it. You have that money, and we were taught a long time ago that if you can invest in anything, you can invest in real estate. It's going to continue on, and that general trend is always going to be up there. It has to be frustrating for people that are in that situation right now. And what you're saying is now, if you are on that sideline, this is the time you want to make that jump forward.
Yeah, and sadly, that $36,000, if you think about it, was actually down payment money that those young people were saving up to put on their down payment. Instead, now they're putting it all towards their rent. And as you said, Brock, they're going to have nothing to show for it. And we're going to talk about the comparison that I did recently on social media, and that comparison actually went viral. And we'll talk about it a little bit later on in the show when we get to it. But there's so many advantages of jumping into the market even today.
And you've touched on this already. The province has brought a new housing policy out. It was announced last week. It's called Bill 23. For our listeners that are out there that need to know about that bill, what do they need to know? And what does it mean really for our region as well, too, Faisal?
So it's such a complex bill, but I'll try to summarize it the best I can. What it does, Bill 23 is an Ontario policy that overrides the municipal zoning laws. So it's saying to the municipalities, okay, fine and well, you have had autonomy over your area, but we now need to look at it from a provincial perspective and look at the crisis that we're facing. There's 1.5 million homes needed in Canada. There's 500,000 new people coming into the country every year, not to mention, the 25-year-olds that are living in mom and dad's basement. So it's basically it's the Homes Built Faster Act is what it is, if you want to summarize what that act does. So in March of 2022, the province announced that we have this shortage of 1.5 million homes. So where are all those homes going to come from? Those homes need to come from creation of more dwellings, more residential dwellings. Where can we create dwellings? Well, they're saying right in your backyard. And I mean literally right in your backyard. So they're allowing 3 units within a residential lot. That includes, let's say you've got your main house. So you may use the main floor and the upper level for yourself. You then create a secondary dwelling in the lower level, or if you have a duplex on the upper level. And then you can have a garden suite, which is a tiny home. And we've talked about this in the past. I think I talked about this about a year ago, that this is coming. And now it's actually here. So these are the 3 units that can be created. So that will be inclusive of these 1.5 million homes that are needed. The nice thing that is going to come from this is that the province is going to eliminate development charges when it comes to that. So it will make it less expensive for people to get this application. Beyond that, there's 29 large municipalities that have been mandated to add these new dwellings. And, we can talk about which dwellings have to be added in which region, but Waterloo region requires by the province 70,800 new homes by 2031. That's an astronomical number. And in a fairly short period of time, we're talking, 9 years here.
And we know, if you just take a step back, the cityscape, the landscape of KW, of the region, has changed already. When I first moved to the area 25 years ago, you had 1 or 2 high rises, but now they're popping up everywhere, right? And that is the reality. We know that the idea, I think, is to sort of build up along the LRT corridor, building into those spaces. Uh, and what you're saying is, we that's all fine and good, but we are already behind schedule, and we need to move those things forward.
We really do. And then you're looking at, Toronto, GTA is going to require 285,000 new dwellings by 2031. Ottawa, 161,000. Mississauga, which is just minutes away from our region, 120,000. Brampton, 113,000. So when you look at Canada wide, the population is concentrated. About a third of Canada's population is concentrated in Ontario and largely in the Golden Horseshoe, which we are a part of. So we're going to see that growth happen in our region, whether you like it or not.
Good information to know for sure, Faisal. We're coming up on a break here on Ask the Experts. When we come back, Faisal has gone viral. We'll talk about a recent comparison chart he posted to Instagram and find out more about that as well too. Stay with us here on City News 570. Welcome back to the show. My guest today is Canada's top real estate broker and author of the book, The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker, Faisal Susiwala. Listeners, if you would like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly at 519-624-5555 or through email, Faisal@homeshack.com. Before the break, Faisal, we were talking about Bill 23, and I wanted to circle back to a few things, talking about development charges and who this bill is really focused towards, and also what does it mean in the municipal area of things as well when it comes to dealing with red tape and actually getting shovels in the ground of those kinds of things. What else do we need to know about this bill?
So largely, it's going to help developers and builders cost cut so that they're not getting bogged down by these development charges, the municipal charges, and parkland designation where they have to give a certain percentage of the land for parkland or funds in lieu of, so 5% of the development or whatever it is in the municipality has to be attributed to parklands and for infrastructure, which there's a need of. But at this moment, there's a greater need for more housing. They're going to lower the taxes on apartment dwellings for the builders and developers that are going to hold on to those. They're going to create more schools in high density areas so that it can handle the population growth that's going to be there. They're going to have more effective use of vacant homes and vacant lands, which again, there's a vast amount of vacant land that's not being utilized, which can be utilized if the zoning bylaws were not so stringent and the municipalities were not putting people through the hoops. And, the development charges will be cut in half from what I understand, which would reduce on average. So if you look at, when you look at the price of a home for $1 million, sometimes it's hard to understand what that $1 million consists of. And in our region and in many regions, between $50,000 to $75,000 of that is actually development charges, levies, building permit fees, improvement fees, parkland designation fees. So what we're hoping for and expecting builders to do is pass along some of those savings to the end user so that it can make it more affordable for first-time home buyers, for people who are downsizing. So if you're living in a large home right now and you're an empty nester, chances are you're going to say, well, where am I going to go? So I'm just going to stick it out and live in this house. But you're not allowing another family to come in and occupy that large space. So if there were spaces that were available for seniors who are downsizing to go into at an affordable price in an affordable community, then those folks will make that move. But it's really a stalemate right now because everyone is just on a holding pattern in pause because they're afraid of what's unknown. And then, we're trying to encourage people to get back into purchasing, but builders are saying, well, it's too darn expensive. And forget the expense. The red tape and the bureaucracy that is involved in getting anything through City Hall, it's absolutely ridiculous. In fact, I'm disgusted with the lack of attention that municipal facilities give to people that are trying to create housing. Try getting a return phone call from any of these municipalities in a timely manner. Try getting an email return from anyone. Okay, you know what? We've hung our hats on COVID for long enough, municipality workers. Let's pick up the phone. Let's engage with people. We're in a crisis. We need people to get moving right now, not being put on the back burner because you're too worried about, relaxing right now. Get back to work and start helping people get into homes right now. So I blame the municipalities, and the government clearly is looking at the municipalities and saying, you guys are doing a crappy job. So we're going to step in, we're going to override you, and we're going to approve these developments, whether you like it or not. And good on the province for doing that.
And that's important information for us to know as well too, Faisal. So I want to backtrack a little bit. You were talking about that idea of empty nesters sitting in a fairly large size home and saying, there's really nowhere for us to go. But I think people of a certain age, people that are my age, and your kids are maybe on their way out. It's almost that mind shift. You have to look at your home and say, it's a big property. It's a big piece of land. I can share this with someone. It is, the idea is always that a person's home is their castle. And sometimes we get wrapped up in the fact that this is mine, this is mine. But if we're able to share that somehow, whether through an in-law suite, whether through a tiny home in the yard, those kinds of things, are you seeing people start to have that mind shift?
Yeah, and Brock, I'm out there in the trenches every day working with real people. So I'm not sitting in an ivory tower as an economist saying this is a problem. I'm actually seeing the problem each day. I walk into your home today and I say, Brock, you and your lovely wife are living in this 3,000 square foot home, empty nested. Why don't we get you into something smaller in a nice community? The first thing you're going to say to me is, Faisal, okay, where is that? My answer is, I don't know. So you're going to say, well, if you don't know where you're going to take me, like hell, I'm going to move out of this home and be homeless. So this is the dilemma that I have each day. I have willing people wanting to move. So then you look at the builders and you say, Mr. and Mrs. Builder, can you please build a nice community? And the builder says, I'd love to, but I'm so caught up with the municipalities and I can't get zoning approvals. I can't get permits. I can't get a return phone call. I'm abiding by these archaic rules and regulations and mindsets. I just can't get past that. So what we need is someone to step in and say, all right, you've had your fun, you're done. We're going to override you and we're going to let this thing happen and we're going to cut back their costs. So it's going to make affordable housing actually happen. So the bill does make sense. And I applaud the Ontario government for actually bringing this out. And I just hope that it can be executed in a timely manner. And for that, throwing money at the municipalities, I don't think was helping, because that was the solution before, right? Let's fund these municipalities, let's get them going, but funding them to do absolutely nothing achieved absolutely nothing.
Right. Your passion is coming through, Faisal, and I love to see that.
I'm very worked up about it.
Let's shift gears a little bit. You recently posted a comparison chart on Instagram, and it goes viral. For someone, as I said before, of a certain age, technology can be a little scary sometimes. But what was this comparison chart all about?
So, I can't take the credit for the actual information. It was Tom Stone, he's a mortgage broker, who actually did a little video on Instagram, and I stumbled across it. And so I took that information and I asked him if it's okay if I actually share that information. And he was gracious enough to let me share it. And what that chart is, and I'm going to post it on my Instagram page as well at Faisal Susiwala. So please follow and see this chart. It talks about February of 2022, this year, and compares to October of 2022 this year, to say, okay, the home that was selling in February of 2022 for $1 million is selling today for, let's say, $800,000. So it's a 20% discount, let's call it. If you had 20% down back in February, you had $200,000 down in February to put down on that $1 million home. Today, you still have that $200,000 to put down. So put that down on the $800,000 home. That means that the mortgage today would be $600 as opposed to a mortgage of $800. The payment based on, well, for example, the interest rate back in February of 2022 was 3.15. Today's interest rate is 5.35. So you would think, wow, my payment's going to be a lot higher. But you have to take into account that your mortgage amount is quite lower.
Right.
So on an $800,000 mortgage at a lower interest rate, which people were fighting each other to get into and fighting each other to pay $1 million for that house, they're going to pay $3,425 a month. But that same home you can buy today at a higher interest rate and only pay $3,325 a month. So you're saving over $100 a month, even though you're paying a higher interest rate. But here's the beauty. In 5 years, that $1 million mortgage, $1 million purchase would have a $713,000 balance owing in 5 years from today. But that $800,000 home only has $553,000 owing. Even though you pay at a higher interest rate, remember, you're putting the same amount down. It does not make sense to say, I'm not going to put that money down. You had the money, put the money down. In Canada, we have no write-off on your personal mortgage. So there's no point in saying I'm not, and I talk about this in my book, and we'll discuss it later. I talk about this, pay your house off first, and then use your home to leverage your other investments and whatnot, but pay your home off. So every Canadian should have the mindset of having a home free and clear. And maybe that's the wrong mindset, but that's my opinion. It's worked for me. And that's what I share with my clients as well.
And it's the same house. It was the same house at $1 million as it is at 800,000. And it's that you come back to that idea. It's your castle. You've got that. This is what the place that you want it to be. Faisal had mentioned this already. He can be found on Instagram, by the way. So it is at Faisal Susiwala. We're going to take another break. We do need to get an update from the City News 570 News Center. When we come back, we're going to talk a bit more about, changing with the times and technology and all of those kinds of things. We're also going to spend a little bit of time before the end of the show today, coming back to talk about Faisal's book as well, too. So stay with us here on City News 570. Show, my guest today is Canada's top real estate broker and author of the book, The Real Deal, billion-dollar real estate broker, Faisal Susiwala. If you would like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or through email, Faisal@homeshack.com. Before the break, you were talking about a number of things. One thing, though, that came up, Faisal, was the idea of interest rates. And we know that we've seen this increase of interest rates over this year, the past almost 12 months now. The idea was to control inflation. How has that worked out?
Well, I think it's failing miserably. And I'll tell you why. So if I look at January interest rates, the prime was at 0.25. Okay, that prime now in current times is 3.75, and we're speaking just and I'm looking at the G7. So I'm looking at the G7 countries. I'm saying what's happening across the world here. So let's look at Canada first. We're at 0.25% in January. We're at 3.75 today. That in January, the inflation rate was 5.1%. Now, the whole idea was to control inflation, bring it down. Today, the inflation rate is 6.9%. So it hasn't really worked, has it? If you look at the US, 0.25, today's interest rate is 4%. It was 7.5 back in January. It's 8.2. Now, here's an interesting fact. In January, Japan is the only G7 country that did not raise interest rates. They left it exactly the same. So it was negative 10% back in January, believe it or not. Today's rate is still negative 10%. So they left interest alone. They did not touch it. Okay. It was in January 0.5% inflation. Right. Today it's 3%. Okay. So they left it alone. They didn't do anything. So what that's telling me, and should tell everyone, is that increasing the rates at the level the banks are doing it is not going to be the answer. There's got to be other solutions. Listen, I'm not an economist. I can't tell you what the solution is, but increasing the rates at the rapid rate that they're doing, it's not helping. We're still seeing increase in inflation. So we've got a big challenge here on how to control this situation without putting people into a situation where they're going to stop them from spending. When you increase the rates to the level they're at, food and shelter is your number one and two priorities in life. Food's gone through the roof, shelter's going through the roof. So are people going to travel? Are they going to spend money on goods? I think it's going to have such a huge negative impact. And again, add the housing shortage and just keep compounding all these issues. There's got to be a better solution than what's out there right now, and raising interest rates to the level that they're going. And that's why I tell my clients, I don't expect this to last more than 2 years, because there's going to be so much pent up demand that something's going to have to give.
And you know, maybe not so much in our lifetime, but maybe if we have older siblings or our parents, and you talk about this in the book as well too, back in the late 70s, early 80s, where people were having mortgages at 17, 18%. And you think there was never any way to get ahead of that wave. And here we are now. Yes, it's gone from, let's say, below 3% to above 5%, but it's a long game. We have to remember that as well too. We know that there was that drop off. Those $1 million homes are, as you said, are sitting at about 800,000 right now. But in the long term, those prices go up. And when you get into real estate, you've said this before too, gone are the days where it's buy and flip. We just don't have the ability to do that necessarily. We have to be looking at this and saying, this is a 10, 15, 20, 25-year commitment, and it will pay off in the long run.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
You've obviously had to change with the times. You mentioned in the book the idea back, 25, 30 years ago, fax machines were considered to be high tech, and a cell phone, it was in a bag and you had it in your car, and it was thousands of dollars. And we've just come back from you talking about Instagram. How do you manage what you've already done so well in the past with new ideas and new technology? I would guess that you're a lifelong learner, and you have to be in the role that you're in.
Absolutely. You said it, like, the minute you stop learning, the minute you believe you've arrived is when your decline starts. So my premise in my entire career is that I will always try to keep up with the latest and greatest technology, and I will adapt to it. I'm not going to be stuck in my ways, because that's where failure starts happening. Because if you start thinking that the way you do it is the only way to do it. Look, in the beginning, I was resisting all of this. I'm like, okay, Facebook, Instagram, this is for kids. This is not something, but little did I know that there was going to be this large amount of e-commerce that comes out of it. And really, our entire existence is now revolving around social media, and our news comes from there, right? Fake or not, that's where our news is coming from. And first thing in the morning, you wake up, of course, I tune into 570, but many people are, of course, going onto their news feeds on their Instagram, on their Facebook, to see what's happening today. They're on their Google. And that's where you have to be present. You have to be engaged. I say this to a lot of colleagues, that your CRM, your database, your contact management, and your social environment, your circle is no longer in a physical social environment. You're engaged on your device, and that's where you need to engage with people. That's where you need to learn what's happening within your communities. And we use in our business now, like I said, fax machines were technology back then. I used to have to drive for hours and hours and hours just to get a sign back on an offer, or I'd have to find a variety store in Mississauga where I could, send a fax to, and somebody would have to pay $2 to get a page from there. I remember my cell phone bill. I was with Cantel at the time. Most people probably won't even remember what Cantel is, but my bill was $1.50 a minute to be on the phone. Like, can you imagine our kids being on the phone right now at $1.50 a minute? So, but that was, if you wanted to be ahead of it, pagers were a thing back then. And I remember Mr. Reed Maneri, who was my mentor, and he hired me on as a realtor at the age of 18. I had to go in there and I said, Mr. Maneri, I really think that I need to find a better way than getting a pager and trying to find a payphone. I used to have two cylinders of quarters in my pocket at all times so I could find a payphone to get to a client because my beeper went off. So I had to listen to that message on a beeper, the voice note. Then I had to call that person. Can you imagine like the amount of work you'd have to go through to do that? We take for granted how easy technology has made our lives. Now, of course, it's made us busier and people want instant replies. Back in 1988, 89, the voicemail for a realtor would be, I'll return your call in the next 24 hours. Can
Right.
you imagine today a realtor saying, you calling your realtor saying, I want to see this house tomorrow or today, and the voice on the other end says, we'll return your call in 24 hours, you'd be out of business. And that's what I mean by evolving with what's happening and staying ahead of it, because if you don't, you're going to become a dinosaur and you're going to become extinct basically. And that's what's happening to many people who haven't engaged, who haven't grasped the technology. I can't take all the credit. Look, I hired the right people. I hired the right services, the right companies to make sure that they keep me current, to make sure that they market. Newspapers have become obsolete, really. So, I pulled out of newsprint advertising about 12 years ago, and all of my colleagues said, you're going to be out of business in no time because you're not in a single magazine, you're not in a single newspaper. How are people going to learn about your listings? Well, that print media was already stale dated before that listing would have been sold already. So what's the point of advertising old news? So what I did at that time, when it was still looked at as for kids, is I started putting all of my business on Facebook and started marketing. I started buying Google ads. And then Instagram has taken that to the next level. LinkedIn, Twitter. These are all platforms that, we engage in. I'll use my mother as an example. A South Asian lady, speaks English, but not extremely well. But she is on Facebook. She is on Instagram. Why? Because she wants to know what her grandkids and children are up to.
That's
And
right.
it's become the format of communication. And this is where, we are heading towards that way, and we're going to engage in that manner, like it or not. That's where we're headed now.
And you bring up a good point. I mean, you still have 24 hours in your day, just like everybody else does. So there's only so much that you're able to put that time and effort into. You need to have time to rest. You need to have time for your family. You need to have time for yourself. And if you can be relying, as you said, relying on other folks that can help you, and as you said, hire the right people, they're going to be looking after those things, putting your face on the back of a bus, right, and all of those other pieces, but it is going to continue to generate those things. I'm great. I'm so glad we had a chance to talk a bit about that too, Faisal. We do need to take a final break here on Ask the Experts. When we come back, we're going to spend some time discussing Faisal's book as well too, The Real Deal, $1 billion Real Estate Broker. So stay with us here on City News 570. Welcome back to the show. My guest today, Faisal Susiwala, also known as Canada's top real estate broker. Listeners, if you would like a chance to chat with Faisal yourself, you can start by going to homeshack.com. You can also call Faisal directly, 519-624-5555, or email faisal@homeshack.com. Recently, Faisal made the decision to write a book. It's called The Real Deal, $1 billion Real Estate Broker. It's available on a variety of platforms, Amazon and Audible and Kindle. Faisal, you mentioned before that in some ways you wanted to leave a legacy for your children. How important was it for you to see this passion project through to completion?
It was very near and dear to my heart. It was very important for me to give my children somewhat of a roadmap, because we're dealing with so many things today in our world. We're dealing with so many issues that are happening, and our children have a lot of mental health issues and that type of thing. And it's important that they have something sort of to reflect on. Growing up in an immigrant family, going through the struggles that I went through, I thought it was just important. We don't sit down with our children and say, well, this is what I went through. And even if you try to do that, they don't want to listen to you. So I figure I'll just put it in writing. At some point, if they're really bored, they'll read a chapter or two. But it was to give them a roadmap on on what to do in times of hardship. I talk about, and I'm very open about things in my book. I was 18 years old when I got into business. I got turned down by several real estate companies. Someone gave me a break. Somebody mentored me. At the age of 19, I partnered up with an investment company. I was one of the principals involved in that. I took the bankruptcy on that because I was the Canadian resident on that one. But that would, for many people, say, well, you're a failure. You went bankrupt. And to this day, when I renew my real estate license, I still have to say that I have gone bankrupt. And I'm not ashamed of that, because I learned from that situation. I learned what not to do. I learned how to be more thoughtful in my investments. And I also learned what to do in times of crisis and how to handle that. And it builds muscle memory when you've gone through these times. And we had a whole different set of struggles that we did when we were younger. Today's generation has a different set of struggles, but I think it's still relatable. And for them to know that, yeah, I might see my dad as someone who's done well in life, is very successful in life. It's important for them to know that there were trials and tribulations and failures that get you there, and you've got to sort of get through it and not give up and just persevere and just do all the things that you're supposed to do. And at some point it will work out for you. So that was part of it. And I had been writing the book for about 7 years prior. I had the structure all there. I just hadn't put it together. And again, when COVID happened, it gave me an opportunity to sit down at the cottage and take that time. And I started writing it just shortly after March of 2020. And by September of 2020, I was able to publish that book.
And congratulations to you. It's an amazing story to be able to tell that story. You mentioned in the book the idea of giving to get. And you come at this and you're looking at it through that business lens sometimes, right? The idea is that you're building up your networks in order to be successful, and being able to give something to someone, that pay it forward idea too, that somewhere down the line it's going to come back to you. And I think that's an important message. A lot of people might go into certain situations thinking right from the get-go, well, what can I get out of this? But if you flip that around, what you're able to give, is that still what drives you today?
It does. And there's two factors to that give to get. One is business. The other is spiritual in a way. And what I mean by that, first part is the give to get. I would always have people approaching me saying, hey, I'm a mortgage broker. I'm an insurance broker. I'm this broker. Can you give me your business? I'm a lawyer. Can you give me your business? And when you're starting out in any business, when I was in the business, I was feeling like, oh, I'm a real estate agent. Can you give me some of your business? Can you use me? Can you use me? But what was I giving those people? What entitled me to getting them to give me business? And I learned this at a very early age, that if I want something, I should start by giving first. So it might be information, it might be time, it might be something that I can give to a value to someone to encourage them to think about me. So give without the expectation of getting anything back. That's first and foremost. But when you continuously give, whether you give to community or whatever it is, there's a good chance that you're going to start getting. And that sort of spills into the spirituality part of it. If you do good, you're going to get good. That, I believe in that. It's just good karma. You're going to have that. So good giving and doing good is worth doing, regardless. So if you can adapt that into your business life, and it's kind of changing your mindset to heart set and start thinking with your heart. And a lot of business people will say, well, as soon as you get your heart involved in something, well, I can tell you, in our business, we're in people's homes. The minute you start thinking with your head and start thinking about commission dollars and what's in your best interest, you've dropped the ball. You're not doing anybody any favors. But when you can give solid advice from your heart, know that you're talking to a family, know that you're selling a home, not a house, that's going to completely transform that transaction. And you're not only going to have a client today or someone who's going to recommend you, you're going to have people out there that are going to advocate for you. And that's the true success, when you have somebody that says, this is the person that I would only use for my business because I trust them. And I've been really honored and grateful. I'm on third and fourth generations of the same family from 35 years ago of being in the business. And that is such an honor for me to be able to work with that. And I look back at those years and I say, I know that knowingly I've never done someone wrong. I've probably made, and I know I've made many mistakes, but not knowingly or intentionally gone out and done that. And that's where the giving to get really resonates with people, I think.
And that point you make, I'm just coming back to it, is that idea of, it's not about you or an individual saying these are all of the things that I do, or I'm really great at all of these things. When other people are saying those things about you, then you know that you've made that impact, because it's nothing to them other than saying that this person's done a really great job, and other people are going to be picking up on that as well too, and saying, well, you know what, I might reach out to this person. And you're absolutely right. You build that connection. You, as you said, these second and third generations where people have said, we worked with Faisal 25 years ago, give him a call or reach out to him. And you've been able to build that up. And you're working in a community that, sure, the community's growing, and we know that population wise, but there's still those connections that you can make, and they don't go away. If let's say an 18-year-old showed up on your doorstep, Faisal, and said, I want to get into the career, I want to start looking at a real estate agent as a role model, as something that I might take on. What would be your most important piece of advice for that young man or woman who comes to your door?
Well, the first advice that I would give that person is, don't do it because you think you're going to make a lot of money, because you can make a lot of money doing a lot of things with, but do it because you're passionate about it. And that this is what you're willing to eat, sleep, breathe. If I can tell you right now, Brock, I wake up every morning just happy, ready to go. 35 years in, I don't look at this as a job. I look at this as a life. And I look at this as something that I'm doing that's fulfilling my needs, and it's fulfilling the needs of others. I believe that I'm doing as much good as I can, and I'm getting the benefits of doing that good as well. So if you're passionate about it, and this is where, I talk to a lot of young people saying, you don't have to fit into that box. You don't have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, especially if you're South Asian. You've got to be one of those things, right? So I say you don't have to be one of those things. You can be whatever. If you want to be a garbage man, be the best garbage man out there. In fact, try to own the garbage company. So like, go for the top of what you can get to in that career and really own it. But eat, sleep, breathe, be passionate about it, and make sure you're excited, because it's a long life. And you don't want to be stuck doing something that you're going to be unhappy doing.
That idea of joy, that someone, and you talk about this, you wake up in the morning, you're happy, that if you're getting up every morning, and what is going to bring you joy, your family is going to bring you joy. But if that other piece is your career, what you've chosen to do with the other 8, 10, 12 hours of your day, that makes it easy to get out of bed every morning. And I think it's important for younger people to hear that as well too. I like that idea, you making that point about university isn't for everybody, right? At the end of the time in high school, you got 4 pathways. You might choose to get into the workforce right away. You might pick up an apprenticeship. You might go to college. You might go to university. You need to know who you are, first of all, because sometimes you start down that path and you got to change things up. But at the end of the day, if you can find something that brings you joy, and if it's real estate, I know a guy that will help you out and move you in the right direction. Last thing I got to ask, and this isn't scripted. With your kids, is there an interest in them in following in dad's footsteps?
So I wish there was. My son, he's at third year university at Western. He's in the health science program. I'm probably the only South Asian father alive who does not want his kid to be a doctor. And my kid wants to be a doctor. But he's showing some interest. I had him working with me this summer, doing a lot of my social media and marketing stuff, and he's starting to show some interest. He's currently working on a business course, and he's doing some pro formas on a development site, which has got me very excited. And I hope that he gets that little spark to think about that. But look, if he's going to be a doctor, I'd like him to learn the business of being a doctor, because some of these doctors do not have business sense. So I'd like him to learn about that so he can, take that information and that income and invest it and have a better life for himself as well.
Faisal, I want to thank you for coming on the show today, and thanks for wrapping up with a personal piece there as well too. Your knowledge, your passion, your understanding of the people that you've worked with for the last 30 years, it's clearly visible, and I know that I'm going to have you on the show again, and I can't wait to have you stop by again. So thanks again for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Brock. Always a pleasure.
That was Faisal Susiwala, Canada's top real estate broker, recently published author of The Real Deal, Billion-Dollar Real Estate Broker. Luckily for us, someone willing to share his thoughts on the current real estate market as well, too. Big thank you to Adam, our technical producer, for pushing all the right buttons today. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. You've been listening to Ask the Experts here on City News 570.